Hey friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I thought I would do a bit of a different video again. About a year ago I did a video on how to use leftover colored images on a card, and it has been an entire year since I have revisited this bowl of colored images. I explained to you guys in that video that if I color images before I have come up with a card design and chosen pattern paper or a color palette or something like that, I just never end up using them. So I've got this whole dish full of images that I have colored, and some of them have literally been in here for years and years, and I just don't do anything with them. So I thought today maybe I would try to revisit this little bowl of images and see if I can create at least a card, maybe two if we have time, using some of these images, and see what we can do just to try to come up with something. So the images that I'm feeling today are maybe this girl here. This is a Birdie Brown image from MFT, and I really love her. I was practicing kind of doing two-toned hair for her. As you can see, there's a little bit of pink mixed in with her kind of ash blonde hair. And then I also have this version here. I colored it twice because I wasn't completely happy with the intensity of this one. And also I had taken my black pen that I used to add the eyes to images, and I felt like her eyes got way too big. Can you see the difference between the two? I felt bad about it enough that I felt like the image was completely ruined, and so I recolored her, and I used that opportunity to kind of beef up the saturation on the image as well. But yeah, I'd like to know your opinion. Now, after some time has passed, quite a lot of time has passed, I actually think she doesn't look that bad anymore. I mean, when you compare her to this one, her eyes do look a lot bigger. But I mean, if she were alone on a card, I don't know if people would really notice. I don't know. I'd love to hear your comments down below what you think. Would you use an image like that on a card, or would you just scrap it because, you know, the eyes are bigger than they're supposed to be? So, but today maybe we'll use this one for now until I hear your opinion. And I know that I colored her little companion in here as well. So here we go. So there's like a dog and a cat in this stamp set, and then another girl as well. So for this one I colored the corgi, and then I also did a card for MFT's channel using the other girl and the cat image. So I thought maybe I would use these on a card today. So let's start with these. I think this one turned out well enough that I hate to see it just sit here and sit here for more years. So yeah, let's plan a card around her if we can. So the next thing I want to do is go to this little envelope that I keep with some colored images, and mainly like backgrounds. I have like stamped backgrounds that I haven't even colored yet. And then I also keep like some backgrounds that I've colored, and then they just didn't work out for the card that I was creating. This is just a practice. I was taking a Sandy Allnut class, not really happy with how it turned out, so that's why I never used it. I definitely need to practice more, but I just haven't had the time. And that was the previous attempt. You can see it's getting better, but still not where I would like to be. But this one, actually, I think these clouds might be an option. I think that could be a nice dreamy card, and it seems to match perfectly. The only other thing that I have that's colored is a gingerbread house, which I obviously don't think will work. And then I also have this background here that I've colored. This is a Hello Bluebird background, but I don't think the yellows really fit. I kind of like the clouds, so let's see if we can make a card using that. So thinking maybe we could have the girl somewhere over here standing on this bottom cloud, And then the dog here. I don't know, that's a lot of empty space. You can see all of this empty space on the sides. So I'm not loving that. I could add a sentiment right here, but I still feel like the card is too empty. Yeah, I'm not loving that. And that's not even a standard size card. Let's grab a card base here. I always keep a whole bunch of card bases folded off to the side here so I can just grab one when I need one. But anyway, let's take a pink one here because that should match. So it's slightly smaller than a standard size card. So to me, there doesn't seem to be enough here for this size of a focal panel. So I'm thinking maybe, well, we have two options. We can either move her over and add another image over here, but then if we put a sentiment on one side or the other, we still have a lot of empty space to work with, and I'm not sure what I would do to fill it. The other option is to trim this focal panel down to a smaller size, which could work. We need the clouds to be going this direction though. But we could trim it into a square possibly, or a circle, or even still keep the rectangle shape, but do like a couple sizes smaller. Okay, let me flip through my dies and see what I have that might work, okay? I'll be right back. I have a couple of options here. I just pulled out quickly a few different MFT die sets. So I have the A2 Stitch Rectangle Stacks Set 2, which is what this one is, but obviously there's smaller ones in the stack, so we could use one of those. I also have the Inside and Out Stitched Circle Stacks. So if you want to go with a circular focal panel, we could use one of those. Or I have these A2 rectangle frames that we could use to just draw the focal panel, you know, make it smaller without cutting it smaller. We could just add a frame over top. So maybe let's try that first and just see how that's looking. So I think I would take the second smallest. So let's just lay that out. So imagine that maybe we do a white or an aqua frame. I think either of those would match these nicely. And then we could still have the girl kind of tucked in there, and then her companion, and we'd still have room for a sentiment. Okay, the stamp set is the Birdie Brown Unicorns and Glitter. Let's see what fits. Maybe I like to do this sometimes when I'm trying to test the space. I actually just hold the stamp set up to the space. So your limited edition would fit nicely in there. Or we could probably squeeze in Your Straight Up Magic. But then she is over so far to the right to fit that sentiment, but he's not. And if we put him to balance her out on the right, then we have all this empty space, and I really don't like that look. So if we use a sentiment that is from the stamp set, I would go with Your Limited Edition. But we don't have to use this stamp set. To be honest, I'm not sure that that's enough of a sentiment. So I would most likely take it to work to sell. So then a birthday sentiment would be what would be best. So let me take another look through my stash and see if I've got a birthday sentiment that seems like it would fit in that space. Okay, so I came across this one. This is from the Pure Innocence Birthday Besties. And there's a couple in here that would work. Hope your day is as special as you are. That one kind of stood out to me as something that would go along with kind of the unicorn theme and the dreamy theme. Let's see if that one is gonna fit. Well, actually we can just... Okay, so once again, if we go with that, she's gonna have to slide over slightly, and then he has to slide over slightly, and we still end up with all this empty space, which I'm not a huge fan of. So that leaves us with two options. We can either stamp out another image, which would probably be the cat, and color that in, or we could cut this focal panel into a different size. So let's set this aside for now and just see what would happen if we used a different die. So let's try the circle just to kind of get an idea. I'm not sure if the sentiment is still going to fit that way. Definitely no room for the sentiment on the focal panel, but that's not necessarily a no. That means that we would have to do the sentiment in a different way, so maybe a banner strip. So we have these banner strips right here. Okay, so let's see if the stamps will actually fit in one of these. That might just fit. So we could do that, cut it down into a circle. Then we could make a card going this way if we wanted to, and do a banner maybe down at the bottom that would kind of give them something to stand on. So that could work. But then we would need some pattern paper to go behind the focal panel. So let me see what I've got. Let me flip through my pattern paper pads and see if I've got something that will match the coloring that I've already got, which can be tricky. All right. As I said, it can be tricky to match your pattern paper to your coloring after the fact because, you know, pattern papers often have like specific color palettes, and you might find some of the colors in that color palette of the paper pad, but maybe not all of them, so that can be tricky. But I did find this one. It's kind of an Easter one. It's a springtime, The Bunnies and Blooms by Simple Stories. But I don't care what the pattern paper pad is supposed to be about. All I care about is that it matches and that the images on the pattern paper are going to work for an everyday card or a birthday card or whatever. Obviously, I wouldn't want to use the one with the bunnies on it or the Easter eggs because that wouldn't really go with our theme. But this one seemed to have the best options for the paper pad. So let's see. We have a pink plaid we could use. And that kind of works. I don't know if this picks up on camera, but the pinks that I used in the coloring are definitely more warm toned, and the pattern paper pink is cool toned. Not a huge deal breaker, but let's see what other options we've got. So let's continue to just flip through here and see. The plaid I don't really like because there's too many colors that we didn't use in the coloring. We've got the yellow and the purple, so that doesn't really work for me. The bunnies, obviously, like I said. There is the pink, but again, I feel like it's the wrong pink, and I feel like it's more noticeable on this pattern because it's got more pink and less of the white. The unicorn or rainbows could be cute, but once again, it's not really drawing in all the colors that we used in our color palette. So this is one chance where the pattern paper works, but I would have preferred to know what the pattern paper I was going to be using was before I started coloring, because I might have, you know, added in some purple or some yellow or something to just bring in more of that color palette to make it work a little bit better. Okay, we've got a blue gingham. That could work I feel like it's just a little bit basic for the images though. We've got the super large floral. That's actually not bad. Because the pinks in these roses, it has both the warmer tone and the cooler tone mixed in. It does have a little bit more of that purplish, but it's very, very pale. And there's some gold in there, but you can barely see it. And depending on, you know, our focal image, you might not even see hardly any of that by the time it's on a card. That might not be bad. It's bold, but then again, so is a girl that's wearing a unicorn, you know, horn on her head and cat ears. So maybe that would work. Okay. Let's go ahead and pull this one out. And maybe we'll use that. So let's set this aside. So for now, let's go ahead and trim this panel down. So this is actually going to be slightly smaller than the die because the die is an outside in. So it's going to leave behind the first set of stitching detail, but it will actually cut out the inner set of stitching detail, which is a good thing because it's almost too big for this panel to trim down without getting some of that stitching detail. But since we're not actually using the outer part, it should work if I line it up correctly. Where do we want to... I don't know, I kind of like this side better. It has more of the variation in the colors and more speckles. So I think I'm going to line it up right here. And just to be sure that I don't accidentally get it, you know, moving while it's in the die cutting machine, I'm just going to put a piece of tape there to hold it in place. All right, so let's trim this down. All right. So here we go. Okay, so we've got our girl here and her little pup. I think that could be cute right there. We've still got a lot of empty space though here. I wonder if we could stamp some of these little starburst images. Sorry, I just stopped there to think for a moment. I think that could be cute. I wonder if I have an ink that's anywhere close to this gold, just in case any of that shows. It might be nice to tie that in. Okay, give me a second. Let me look through my stamp pads. All right, I have this very old Delicata Golden Glitz pigment ink pad. I've had this for many, many years. I would say 8 or 9 years at least, and I haven't used it in ages. So I thought maybe we could test it out on the scrap of what is left over here, just to kind of get an idea of how it looks and see if that's something that we want to use. So I'm just going to take off one of those images and we'll ink that up. Is it even going to ink up? Yes, it looks like it's working. Okay, and then let's just stamp it down and see what that looks like. Okay, not too bad. It's got a little bit of shimmer to it. I don't know how well that picks up. And let's see if it ties in. That's a pretty decent match for that gold in the pattern paper. So maybe we could do that, but it didn't stamp out perfectly. So I think if I do that, I want to use my Misty just to make sure that if it doesn't stamp perfectly the first time, I can re-stamp again. All right, so I've got them lined up, I think, how they're going to end up going on the card. I'm just going to place my magnet right over top of them to hold them in place. We'll put one there. Got a little trio. Maybe we could put that over there. And there's one more. Maybe we can put one over here as well, just to bring that color throughout. Okay. Pick those up with the door of my Misty. And then okay, let's see how this goes. Grab my Twiddler's Nook pressure pal here to get even coverage as I press down. Okay. I think those all actually look pretty good. It is pigment ink, so it'll stay wet for a while, so I don't want to smear it, so I have to be really careful. It'll stay wet for a little bit. I think we need one more, so I'm taking the one from over here, and maybe we'll add that one right up at the top. Just making sure it's not like perfectly aligned with this one. There we go. The other ones are still there, but I'll just ink up the one this time. Okay, I think that's not too bad. Just carefully remove these guys. And there you can see that little bit of shimmer, that gold. Okay, so while I have my Misty out, I will stamp out my sentiment, so I'll do that next. And by the way, if you don't have like a Delicata ink, and I'm not entirely sure that it's still available, if I can find it, I'll link it. If I can find it, I will link it down below with all of the products like I always do. But if it's not available anymore, you could also use gold embossing powder and just stamp it in Versamark ink and then heat emboss it. So that's another option that would get you pretty close to the same look. Pretty similar. Alright, so for the sentiment, I think we will just stamp that on some white cardstock. Should we do it on white? Okay, I think I'm actually going to stamp it on a piece of Bristol because I don't really want to add another color. This background is already fairly busy, so I don't want to add something else that's going to overcomplicate the card. But if I use white cardstock like I was planning, it's not going to match with the color of the Bristol down at the bottom. It's going to kind of contrast a bit. Whereas if I use a piece of Bristol, it's going to blend right in. So I think that's what I'm going to do. This is just a scrap and it's not even cut straight, but that doesn't matter because we're going to trim it down anyway. So I'm going to do, I hope your day is, no, let's do happy birthday to an awesome friend. I want to make it clear that it is a birthday card for anybody who's flipping through quickly, you know, wanting to maybe buy a gift card and they want to pick up a card as well. So we'll make it nice and clear what this is. And hopefully that'll still fit. Oop, I always forget that. Okay, hopefully that will still fit. Maybe not that one. It might be tight, so I might have to do something else. I might have to just trim this down by hand, or look if I have a die that has a banner that is just slightly taller, which I don't know if I do or not. I think the Lawn Fawn one is probably about the same height. So, well, we'll stamp it out and we'll go from there. So I'm just going to center on this panel first, and I think we'll stamp it with, I think we'll just go with black. I'm afraid if I stamp it in the Delicata, it'll be too difficult to read. And on the Bristol, which is a slicker surface, you do have to be careful what kind of ink you use on top of that, because you want it to be able to stand up and really be nice and crisp. So VersaFine Onyx Black is a good one for that. Alright, so let's stamp that out. And I'll probably want to stamp it out one more time, just to make it nice and bold as possible. Alright, that looks pretty good. I'm going to set that aside to dry, and in the meantime we will stamp on the inside of the card. I switched to one that's going in the portrait orientation with the top fold, because I always like the top fold, and we'll figure out something to stamp on the inside. So let's go with the one I was originally going to use on the front. I hope your day is as special as you are. And then, just so we don't take up too much space, let's go with a smaller image that leaves more room for the sentiment. And I think I'm going to go with this little unicorn cat on the inside. I think that would be cute. Maybe move that down just a little bit. Okay. Pick that up with the door of my Misty. And let me grab some ink to stamp that in. We'll do Bubblegum from Lawn Fawn. That one is always a good match for this Ballet Slippers cardstock from Lawn Fawn. And once again, I'm going to stamp that down at least twice, because this ink does dry back a bit, so I want to make sure that even when it does, that, you know, whatever is on the inside is very legible. I feel like it needs a little bit more ink down here on that bottom line. And that's better. Alright, so we'll set that aside. Okay, I did find one that was longer, or not longer, but higher. So that should fit that just fine, but it's obviously way too long. So I'm going to do some selective die cutting. I'm going to match it up on the left-hand side where I want that to be. Just make sure it's straight. And then once I have that, I'm going to tape it into place. And we'll stick a little piece of tape at this end too, just to make sure it doesn't shift at all. And I'll run that through my die cutting machine. And then for the other side, we'll just pull that out, remove that tape, and then we'll line up the right hand side so we have just about the same space on that end. And that looks just about right. Make sure it's nestled in there at the top and bottom so it'll cut straight again. And then we'll just put another piece of tape down there and run that back through the die cutting machine. Should have a sentiment banner trimmed down to the perfect lengths. So we can set that aside. I still want to give this a little bit more time to dry. I don't know if it is fully, so let's work on the pattern paper for now. I know I want to trim this down. Obviously, it's a 6x8 sheet of pattern paper, so we need to trim this down to a standard size card. I could do that with my paper trimmer, but I think I'm actually going to use some dies just so we get that nice stitching detail on the edges like on our focal panel. So I think I'm going to go back to those A2 Stitch Rectangle Stacks set 2, which was what the focal panel was originally trimmed down with, and we'll take the largest one this time. And our card is going in this orientation. So it would make more sense to trim it down this way, because then we would have, you know, a lot left over to use on another card. But then the roses aren't going in the same direction as they were. So I just have to see if I still think it looks okay, or if I want to go ahead and trim it down this way. But I don't think it looks too bad going this direction. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. I'll trim this side down so it'll fit, and then I'll cut this out right about there at the top corner. I like the amount of blue that is showing through in little pockets to tie into the blue in our color palette. Alright, so that is how our panel is looking. Take that out and bring in the card base. So that all looks good. Should I flip it this way maybe? Then more of the roses kind of look like they're going up. And then the focal panel would be somewhere in here. So it does, that pattern paper is quite busy, but because our focal panel is quite large and there's a lot more white space happening on it, I think it does tone down that pattern paper quite a bit. If we did want to cut down even more on the busyness of the pattern paper, we could combine an extra sheet. So we could actually take a little bit of this gingham print and maybe trim that down and place it behind. That might not be a bad look. I actually quite like that. Yeah, why don't we do that? I think that would be nice. So I'm going to trim that down again with this same die, so that it lines up with the stitching detail on the edges. Okay, so we've got that piece. And that will line up right there. So let me grab some glue. We can go ahead and commit to that. So using my Barely Art Precision Craft Glue, make sure that it's actually coming out. Ever since I went on vacation for a couple weeks to Germany, it's been a little bit more clogged than usual, so I probably am going to have to like take it over to the sink and clean out the top with a little bit of hot water pretty soon here. But usually using the needle and just kind of putting it up and down inside the nozzle will work. So let's do that, and I'm just going to line it up and make sure that all the edges are about equal. There's equal space on both the left and the right, and I do have to work quickly because this glue dries really fast. Okay, and then we'll do the same. Add the glue to the back of the blue gingham print. And I think we'll line that up pretty much in the center. It might be slightly higher at the top here, but that's all right. I still think that will look nicely balanced, and we will add our focal panel to match. So I definitely want to pop this up on some foam tape. So let me grab my giant roll, which is not so giant anymore. It's probably half used maybe. And we'll just take off a big strip here. Add that to the back. All right. Good, we didn't smear anything, although some did come off, so that ink is still wet, so we do need to be careful. Alright, so we'll just peel off these release papers and line that up. That should be about straight. I want to have the same amount of space here on the sides, and then the same amount of overlap on the top and the bottom. And then I think we'll take our sentiment next and add that down here. And we're going to need a little bit of foam tape on that as well. Hopefully that's not too much foam tape, but if it is, we'll have to rip it off and cut it down a bit, which it might be. Let's see. Yeah, it is. Alright, so we'll have to tear that back off carefully and trim off. I'm gonna pair of scissors. My Teflon coated scissors from Cutter Bee are going to be the perfect ones to cut down foam tape. So we'll trim off not quite half of it, and I'll definitely save this for something else in the future. I just stick it on the top, the leftovers. And then let's see, make sure this is at the bottom. And then we'll add some liquid glue to the part that's going to overlap that focal panel. And then we can peel off that release paper and nestle that right in there. And again, I'm trying to make sure that these are even on both sides here before I press that down. Okay, and all we've got left is our images. So let's add some liquid glue to the back of the girl. Get her lined up. And then her little buddy, the corgi. So one thing I'm not entirely happy with is the way that I colored his little horn. I wish that I had done it more like hers. So I think I might try to fix that. I'm not 100% sure exactly what colors I used, but I think I can guess pretty closely. So I think I used, for the aquas, I think I used a touch of the BV13. Are we going to shade it on the same? Feels like I should shade it on the other side, but it's already shaded on this side and we're going to leave some white, so we'll keep it that way. So we'll do blue, pink, white, blue. Just trying to keep it in the same order here. And then BG11 would be probably what I blended that out with. That's what that looks like to me. On this top one, I'm only going to get those 2 shades in because it's such a small area. And then BG10 would have been the lightest. The pink is trickier, but I'm pretty sure that I used RV 13, 11, and 10, it looks like, maybe, or maybe 14, 13, and 11. Let's start with 13. We can always add some dark to it. Let's start with 13. And it would be that top one. And 11. And a little bit of 10. I think that is just about right. I did go a tiny bit out of the line, so I'm going to grab my colorless blender and just clean up the edge there and there, which I don't know if you guys can even tell, but I can see it. Okay. And then I think maybe a little extra sparkle, right? So let's grab some Stardust Stickles and we'll see where we add that. We'll put it on the side of the unicorn horn, not too much, but a little bit there. And his as well. Just using my fingernails to smooth that out so it's not too much. We'll do a little on his wings and maybe his bow tie. And then for her, maybe the bow on her boots and the bow on her head. And where else? I hate to cover up all those pleats. Maybe just the white part of her dress a little bit. Just so there's like a flash of something sparkly in there in her little underskirt. I think that's good. I don't want to go nuts. Maybe we could add a few little extra sparkles in the background. Just here and there, kind of mixed in with the gold. And I think that's going to be it. So at least we got one card made out of some leftover images from this giant bowl of, well, it's not giant, but there are quite a lot of images in there that have been there for quite some time. I think because of the time, we're just going to do the one today, but let me know if you'd be interested in me doing another video like this. I still have a lot of images to go in here, so I could definitely do some more if you're interested. So let me know what you think about that. And yeah, but for now, we at least got one card made, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I think it's very girly, very princessy, and I think it'll make somebody really happy. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you had a good one, and I'll see you soon in another video. Bye-bye.